You know, India is one of the fastest growing major economies on the planet, a real powerhouse aiming for this massive multi-trillion-dollar future. But here's the paradox. It's also a country where major industries face constant power outages, and millions of people still live without reliable electricity. So what's the real story here? Is India's power sector a crippling crisis? Or, as some people are saying, a multi-trillion-dollar gold mine just waiting to be tapped? All right, let's get into it.
So to really get your head around this, just look at the promise versus the reality. Back in 2018, the government made this huge announcement. Every single village in India now has electricity. A historic moment, right? But then you fast forward to today, and the reality on the ground is, well, it's different. We're still seeing massive power cuts in big cities, and millions of people just don't have consistent power. So what gives?
And sometimes a massive national problem can be explained by a really simple, relatable story. Take Ayush Singhal. He later went on to build a multi-million-dollar company to fix this exact issue. But he remembers back in his college days, paying the electricity bill was like the absolute last thing on anyone's mind. Until, of course, they'd come home and boom, no power. Now you take that small moment and multiply it by millions of homes and businesses, and you start to see the deep systemic problem here.
To really get to the bottom of this, we need to look at 3 fundamental flaws in the system. And honestly, the best way to picture them is as 3 giant leaky pipes in the country's power grid.
Okay, so pipe number 1, that's all about supply. For years, the state-run coal industry just couldn't produce enough juice to keep up with India's booming energy demand. Pipe number 2 is the grid itself. I'm talking an old, creaking system that was built for a totally different time. But it's this third leaky pipe, transmission and distribution losses, or T&D, that's the real kicker. This is where the system is just hemorrhaging energy and money.
So what in the world are T&D losses? Well, imagine the entire power grid is one enormous water pipe stretching across the country. For every 100 gallons of water you pump in at one end, only about 85 gallons actually make it to the tap at the other end. The rest is just gone. It leaks out from technical problems and, a huge part of it, from things like unauthorized connections and power theft.
And this chart is where the scale of the problem just slaps you in the face. On average, India loses about 15% of all the electricity it generates before it even reaches a paying customer. Now, to put that into perspective, let's look at China. They lose only about 2%. That is a massive, massive difference in efficiency.
And here's the thing, this isn't just about wasted electricity. All that leakage adds up. It translates into a direct economic loss that's equivalent to a staggering 2% of India's entire GDP every single year. It's like a giant, invisible tax on the whole economy.
But right when it felt like this old, leaky system was about to burst, a new technology showed up that changed everything. I'm talking about the solar revolution. And it didn't just offer a new source of energy, it offered a completely new way to think about the entire system. Okay, you have got to see this because this chart is just wild. Back in 2009, making 1 unit of electricity from solar cost about 22 rupees. Fast forward to today, and it's down to about 1.6 rupees. That is not a price drop, that is a nosedive. We're talking a reduction of over 90% in just over a decade, making solar ridiculously cheap.
And get this, it's not just about the money. It's about speed, serious speed. A traditional coal plant or a nuclear facility can take 5, maybe 10 years to build. A solar farm, you can get one up and running in a matter of months. It's basically a plug-and-play solution that completely skips the crazy logistics of mining and shipping fuel around.
So all this cheap, fast solar power is amazing, right? But it actually creates a brand new challenge, which, as it turns out, is a massive business opportunity. The problem is that old one-way grid just can't handle it. See, the old grid was built like a one-way street. You had a few giant power plants at one end, pushing electricity down the road to millions of homes. Simple. But now, with things like rooftop solar, every single home, every factory can be its own little power plant. So you don't need a one-way street anymore. You need a smart two-way superhighway where energy is flowing in both directions all the time. And to manage all this traffic going back and forth, you need a whole new kind of traffic cop. And you're going to need a lot of them. The latest estimates say India needs to install somewhere around 500 million new smart meters by 2030. That's one of the biggest infrastructure projects happening anywhere on Earth right now. So what exactly makes these meters smart?
Well, unlike that old, kind of dumb meter on the side of your house that just spins, a smart meter is a two-way communication device. It lets the power company read your usage remotely. No more sending a guy out to your house. It helps you see exactly how much power you're using in real time. And, crucially, it can help prevent blackouts by letting the utility companies smartly manage demand across the whole network.
This whole transition is so fundamental, so absolutely game-changing, that experts are calling it India's next UPI moment. And if you know anything about the digital payments revolution that UPI kicked off in India, you know that is a huge statement. This is a total rebuild of the country's energy backbone. So, this whole story, this massive pivot from a national crisis to a golden opportunity, it brings up a really important question, especially for investors. How do you spot these multi-trillion-dollar shifts before they're obvious to everyone else?
Well, here's a blueprint from one successful investor on how to find these hidden gems. And it's not about playing the stock market. Step 1, spot a megatrend, an unstoppable wave like India's push for clean energy. Step 2, find the companies that are building the capability to solve the future problems that trend creates, not the ones just chasing today's profits. Think about the companies making all those smart meters. Then it's about backing the founders who are completely obsessed with the mission, and finally, thinking in terms of a decade, not just the next quarter. It's a bet on the fundamental building blocks of the future. When you step back, the story of India's power grid is just incredible. It shows how a nation's biggest, most painful crises can actually morph into its single greatest opportunity. And it leaves you with a really interesting thought. If a solution for something as boring as an electricity meter can unlock this much value, what's the next boring sector that's just waiting for its own revolution?